Welcome, everybody. We're gonna start shortly, as soon as everybody starts joining in a couple of minutes. Thank you for being here on time. Thank you for joining us. We will start shortly in a minute. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. My name is Gustavo Angeles. I'm the Environmental Justice Program Manager at the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club. Today is our first webinar on energy equity and energy burden. We're going to discuss what energy burden is and what it looks like from many households here in Virginia. We have the pleasure to have with us Sharonda William-Tack. She's the Associate Director of Energy Justice Campaign and Healthy Communities. She leads the Sierra Club's campaign work to create equitable access to energy retrofits for low-income Black households can help reduce energy burdens and decrease residential energy use that contributes to climate change. As we know, everybody deserves access to clean and affordable energy. But here in Virginia, some households, unfortunately, they are not. They struggle and they have high energy costs monthly. Because of these, energy burden are made worse when the weather, the extreme weather events, temperatures are happening due to climate change, in addition to the discrimination and redlining issues. This historic discrimination housing policies in the United States has led us to create this big difference and produce a heavy burden, in particular on Black households, being more likely to experience these high energy burden bills than white households. And we cannot fully address the climate change and systemic injustices like redlining without addressing and alleviating energy cost burdens to move towards energy justice. So that's why we are creating these webinars. This is the first one on a series that we're going to be doing. And as I said, Sharonda is going to give us a presentation today. So Sharonda, thank you for being here with us. And please go ahead.
Thank you, Gustavo. So happy to be here. Thank you for everyone joining. I've been working in the field of energy justice for about 5 years. My work has been pretty focused in the state of Michigan. I've done a lot of work focused in Detroit and Flint to create policies and programs in order to reduce energy burden in majority Black communities that are experiencing some of the highest energy burdens in Michigan and also in the country. And so I wanted to start this webinar with telling you a story of why I care about this work, why I'm working on energy burden. So a couple of years ago, I met Maureen Taylor, who is the chairperson of the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization. And so they're an organization in Michigan that really focus on preventing water, electric, and gas utility shutoffs in Michigan, particularly in Detroit, and really working with community members in order to make sure that no one's experiencing shutoffs. And so when I spoke to Maureen, I just wanted to learn more about the work they were doing prevent utility shutoff. She told me about the community members that she knows that really experienced some of the most harmful impacts of energy burden. She told me about families that had died of hypothermia, during some of the coldest Detroit winters when their utilities have been shut off. She told me about, families that had also, perished in the heat when you have really hot summers that we're seeing a lot more of with the impact of climate change because utilities have been disconnected. But the one story she told me that for me really impacted me in the way that I see his work. She told me that she was tired of attending funerals with tiny caskets from children that had died as a result of utilities being shut off in the home. So no one should experience that, not being able to pay your utility bill should not be a death sentence. And when we finished our conversation, she asked me, what are you and what's Sierra Club going to do to prevent utility shutoffs? And so that's been really the focus of my work has been trying to figure out a solution so we can prevent shutoffs and make sure that everyone has equitable access to clean and affordable energy. Next slide, please. The Department of Energy defines energy justice as the goal of achieving equity in both the social and economic participation in the energy system, while also remediating social, economic, and health burdens on those disproportionately harmed by the energy system. Energy justice explicitly centers the concerns of frontline communities, working class people, indigenous communities, and those historically disenfranchised by racial and social inequity. Energy justice aims to make energy accessible, affordable, clean, and democratically managed for all communities. Energy justice specifically focuses on the ways communities should have a say in shaping their energy futures through policy involvement, as well as ensuring that the policies being developed don't have unequitable impacts on the most marginalized communities. Next slide, please. Energy justice has several aspects, including energy insecurity, energy burden, and energy democracy. As it relates to energy insecurity, people who experience that are people who are unable to pay for basic energy needs, such as heating, cooling, and lighting, and live in a state of energy insecurity. Age and quality of residence, advanced building technologies, community health and air quality, economic burden, and behavioral coping mechanisms all contribute to energy insecurity. Energy burden is defined as a percentage of gross household income spent on energy costs and reflects the disproportionate allocation of a household's budget on energy costs. And we'll speak more about energy burden later in the webinar. Energy democracy is a concept developed within the environmental justice movement that pairs renewable energy transition with efforts to democratize production and management of energy resources. Next slide, please. Energy justice is closely connected to both environmental justice and climate justice. Environmental justice emerged in the early 1980s in the wake of damning evidence that communities of color often face disproportionate environmental burdens, and that the suite of recently passed environmental laws did little protect such communities from environmental harms. And the climate justice movement, which emerged in the late 1990s and 2000s, in light of recognition that climate change would disproportionately affect those in the global South, who did very little to contribute to creating the problem of climate change in the first instance. Both environmental justice and climate justice weave together the requirements of both procedural and substantive justice. In the case of environmental justice, key principles of the movement include fair distribution of the burdens of development and involvement in all aspects of the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Climate justice proponents argue for policies that address the disproportionate burdens that will be borne by vulnerable communities due to climate change. Energy justice emerges from these two movements. An energy just world involves equitable sharing of benefits and burdens involved in the reduction and consumption of energy services. It is also one that is fair in how it treats people and communities in energy decision-making. Next slide, please. So what is energy burden? Energy burden is a percentage of a household's income that is allocated to your energy costs. Energy burden is disproportionately felt by lower incomes, older adults, and communities of color. Next slide, please. More than 30 million Americans live with a high energy burden and struggle to pay their utility bills every month. This is partly due to poverty, but it's also due to household inefficiencies such as a leaky roof, poor insulation, or inefficient appliances. A household that has a high energy burden is one that allocates more than 6% of their income energy costs. That is considered unaffordable. Many Black families live in neighborhoods that lack shade and also have poor housing stock. And this is due to redlining policies as well as residential segregation. And so you're seeing that disproportionately many Black communities are experiencing higher energy burdens because of older housing, as well as inefficiencies, like I said, living in neighborhoods that lack shade. And so you're seeing a lot of heat island impact that's also raising people's bills. Next slide. ACEEE wrote a report in 2020 called How High Are Household Energy Burdens? In that report, they documented many of the causes of high household energy burden. So many of the causes are often the result of systematic factors, barriers and challenges that these households face. Some examples of physical contributors to high household energy burden are housing age, so living in an older home that's less efficient, housing type, so for example, manufactured housing, building envelope, and so poor insulation, leaky roofs, poorly maintained heating and cooling, HVAC, and or inadequate air sealing, as well as climate change and weather extremes that raise the need for heating and cooling. Examples of socioeconomic contributors to high household energy burden are chronic economic hardship, and so people who are unable to get out of the cycle of poverty, sudden economic hardship, and so people have severe illness or disaster event, or the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that there are many people that suddenly saw themselves, in places of poverty and not be able to pay their utility bills. There's also just the inability to afford upfront costs of energy efficiency investments. If you don't live in a state that gives no cost investments, or if your utility doesn't offer it, people are unable to afford rebates or loans where they can barely afford to pay their utility bills. Another contributor is difficulty qualifying for credit or financing options to make efficiency investments, again, due to financial or other systematic barriers. And there are just generally systematic inequalities relating to race, ethnicity, income, disability, and other factors. Some examples of behavioral contributors to high household energy burden are lack of trust and uncertainty about investments or savings. A lot of times there's a lack of trust when dealing with utility, which is understandable because again, we have utilities that are shutting folks off and not finding ways to help people be able to manage their bills. There's also a lack of cultural competence when it comes to outreach and education programs. And so again, with utilities, a lot of times they may have programs available, but they're actually really going into the communities and speaking to people in the way that they're going to receive the information in the right way. Also, increased energy use due to occupant age, number of people in the household, health-related needs, or disability. Some examples of policy-related contributors to high household energy burdens are insufficient or inaccessible policies and programs for bill assistance, energy efficiency, and weatherization. And so we know this exists within utilities on the state level as well as the federal level. Many policies just are not doing a good job actually targeting households that are experiencing high energy burden and households that have high utility debt. Also, utility rate design is definitely an issue, such as high customer fixed charges that limit a customer's ability to respond to high bills through energy efficiency or conservation. Also, there's a lot of assumptions about behavioral issues. A lot of times people want to say that, your energy burden is high because you're not taking your lights off or you left your fridge open. But there's been a lot of research, really examining that that's not the case. And so we've seen research examining energy benchmarking data in a few major cities that's found that households from both the lowest and both highest income brackets have the highest energy use intensity. And so that is, they have the highest energy consumption per square foot. So while consumption behaviors are regarded as a driver for high energy use consumption among higher income households, researchers found that inefficient heating and lighting infrastructure really explains high energy use intensity among low income households. So for higher income households, you're seeing large amounts of energy being used to power large amounts of energy, such as large appliances, large devices. While low income households tend to use fewer, less efficient devices that require relatively large amounts of energy due to the inefficiency of the dwelling or the appliance itself. Therefore, household inefficiencies rather than efficient behaviors tend to lead to higher energy use and expenditures for low-income households. Next slide, please. Researchers have also found that many households with high energy burden also live in older, inefficient, and unhealthy housing. Inefficient housing is associated with other health impacts such as carbon monoxide poisoning, lead exposure, thermal discomfort, as well as respiratory problems such as asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's also associated with the potential for hypothermia and heat stress resulting from leaky or unrepaired heating and cooling equipment. Households experiencing energy insecurity may forego needed energy use to reduce energy bills, so forcing them to live in uncomfortable and unsafe homes. Many people use coping strategies such as using secondary heating equipment to compensate for an efficient or inadequate heating system. So people using space heaters or opening their ovens in order to keep their homes more comfortable and warm. And using these coping measures can compromise resident safety and comfort and also increase exposure to toxic gases. High energy burdens also have mental health impacts, such as chronic stress, anxiety, and depression associated with fear, anxiety around access to energy, and really the complexities of navigating energy assistance programs and then the ability to control energy costs. Also, high energy burdens are associated, really with people who are caretakers of children. One of the reasons that kids are moved in the homes are because home is not working utilities. So imagine the constant stress of figuring out how to balance paying your energy bill, affording food for your family, can we afford medical costs, and then having to deal with, will my kid be removed from my home? These are just stressors that no one should have to deal with, but many people are experiencing as they're really dealing with unaffordable energy bills. Next slide, please. And so with energy burden is largely a localized issue. And so you're going to see certain communities that have higher concentrations of high energy burden. And in Virginia, one of those communities is Newport, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach area. And so as you can see, right now we're looking at Department of Energy lead tool data that shows us high energy burden in civic census tracts within cities. And as we can see, the dark orange, reddish color is showing us energy burdens above 10%, upwards of 12%. Again, looking at that percentage of income is going towards your energy costs. And so we're seeing that dark orange, dark red color in the Portsmouth, Newport News communities in Virginia. Next slide, please. And now we look at this slide and we can see those same communities that had the dark red, orange colors that show us, very high severe energy burden are also communities that have majority Black populations. And so we're seeing that direct connection between high energy burden and racial disparities. And again, as we said, a lot of this, really comes from historic discrimination. So again, many communities that were formerly redlined, that are still experiencing the impacts of residential segregation are same communities that are experiencing high energy burdens. And so energy burden is a racial justice issue. There's no way to not connect it to that. And again, the data is very clear. So now we're gonna watch some videos and we are going to hear directly from people in Virginia that are experiencing energy burden and talking about what those impacts look like.
And to the public, feel free to start putting your questions on the chat box. We will take questions at the end of the presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm in the beautiful home of Miss Pauline Jones, as I stated before, in Chesapeake, Virginia. She's in the South Norfolk section of Chesapeake, and she lives in an area off Atlantic Avenue corridor, where the energy burden rate is running around 6 to 10%. And like I said before, Miss Jones is a homemaker, and she's built a very beautiful place here for her family. She's a senior occupant dweller here in her apartment, and her. So good afternoon, Pauline. We're not gonna be formal. How you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. What about yourself?
I'm doing good. Today has been busy, but it's beautiful outside. A little overcast. So so your energy bill. When I say energy, I'm talking about your electric bill from Dominion, correct?
Yes.
Dominion Energy, and so what do the bill? Because this is a 2 bedroom, I guess about 900 square foot, maybe if it's that much. What do your energy bill be running in the summertime? How much your electric bill be running in the summertime?
Maybe about 140.
Ooh, higher. I was thinking like 125,
It'll
but
go up. It'll go up. You're using the AC.
and that is and you are on a fixed income, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So people just imagine, if you are you're on a fixed income and you have to pay your rent and you're looking at utility bills, electric bill to keep, you got to have air condition because you also have some health issues, correct, Miss Jones?
Yes.
Right. So so having cool air, having her climate to be efficient and maintaining a good temperature in this, especially in this wintertime too, of course, because you don't get cold, but especially in the summertime when it gets hot, is essential. Is essential for cooking. What do you do with your electricity?
I run lights. I have to have lights to see.
That's
I have
right.
to have lights to cook.
Right.
I have to have warm water,
That's right.
water,
Exactly.
heat.
So how does it make you? How do you feel? What do you? When especially when it's in the fall and spring, we don't depend on the heat or air conditioning systems as much. But during the winter months and when as we get this gets cold in the summer, and you know that these high bills are coming, how does that make you feel as far as your security? Maintaining your health and well being in your home.
Worried. Worried because when that bill go up there by me being on a certain income, I
Right.
worry that may not be able to pay that certain bill or another certain bill. So I go to other options
Great.
far as going out, getting help from social service, Salvation Army, any
Right.
means necessary.
I hear you. And so the process, far as getting those funds, let's say with the Salvation Army, what do you have to go through to secure to make sure that they do pay that bill for you? What are the requirements that you have to? Because I want people to understand the effort that is needed to access those funds. So what do they require you to do, and what did you have to do physically? Go to the place, or how does that
You
work?
have to go to the place and put in an application. Once the application is done, like if you have a remaining bill that's overdue, you have got to pay that first. Then they'll start helping you after that bill's out the way with your new current bill.
So they have to. So you have to make sure that any past due bills
It's paid
is
off.
paid off. So
Correct.
that's an extra burden right there. So an added burden. So is the social service pay that past due bill? Can they pay that for you?
Yes, social service can pay the past due bill.
Okay, great. So other than that, so then, but they have designated times, correct? You just can't go up there in a day and ask for help.
No, you can't. They have they set days, and you know that if your bill have to be paid, and you know you can't afford it. It's best to get there to do what they ask you to do to get in, so they can help you pay it.
So you have a certain time that you have to be there and not that all.
Right, they have certain days, right?
Okay. So do you use this funds to help you? So every every time they're available, are you able to get those funds from
Well,
those agencies?
well, you should be able to get that help if you don't have enough funds, you should be able to get that help.
Right. And but you have been able to access the
So far, thank the
right.
Lord. So yes, yes, I have.
Well, that is good. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time, Ms. Jones. This is what we wanted to talk to you about because what we're doing, I'm Lynn Godfrey with the Sierra Club, and what we're trying to do is get get this issue that you're having and that so many others having, so that we can, so that poor people are not burdened with such high bills, and that we can get policies, laws passed to govern these energy industry and companies like Dominion, so that they're not, getting away with highway robbery with these high bills. But and that's what we're here to do. And I appreciate the time. I love your beautiful home. Your home is beautiful. So thank you very much. And I will let you know when the webinar is, so that you most definitely will be able to view it. Have a blessed day.
You too.
My name is Joan Jones. I'm a resident of Virginia. I've been here all my life. I grew up in Norfolk County. Then I moved to Portsmouth. I moved back to Chesapeake, and now I'm back in Portsmouth again. And I love Virginia. If you're not on the budget, it's up and down. It's up and down. And you don't know. Your bill is lower than your budget, but you pay the budget. This month is one thing, next month is something else. I believe people have problems with the bills. Some of us feel like other people deserve it more than me. Well, I don't. I don't apply for the help that you can get. I never do. I never have. I'm on the budget, but I've never applied for the help. So no, I don't feel like my bill is fair, but thank God I can pay it.
Okay. So we have a few questions from the public. One from Julie Bauer says, what do you say to people who claim the energy burden is on poor people as a whole and not on Black people in particular?
Sure, I can answer that question. I have, I'd say two answers to that question. One is that the data is just really clear. Back in 2020, I started working with Sierra Club. We have a analyst team that they do a lot of our analysis, and they've created an energy burden mapping tool. And so they use Department of Energy lead tool data as well as American Community Survey data. And we're able to look at where energy burden is shown across the country. And so in 2020, really coming out of the racial reckoning, I was really curious to see where we were seeing overlap with high energy burden in Black communities. And basically every state that you look in, when you look at where you're seeing the highest concentrations of high energy burden, when you look at a map of where there are majority Black communities, that's also where you're seeing high energy burden. And so I would say that the data is incredibly clear. It's not even up for argument at this point. Also, there's a paper released in 2020 out of UC Berkeley, and the researcher Eva Leibich did a paper called the race gap in residential energy expenditures. And within that paper, controlling for income, household size, homeowner status, city of residence, papers showed that Black households have higher residential expenditures than white households in the United States. And even looking at every income distribution, you were seeing that Black households are paying more for energy than white households. And then we can definitely point you to that research paper. It's been just widely noted and pointed to as we're starting to speak more about the connection between energy burden and race. And again, much of what we're seeing is, again, looking at the overlap between high energy burden communities and where we're seeing formerly redline communities. And so seeing that a lot of houses in these communities where Black people were forced to live are houses that are older and falling apart and that are, inefficient. And so, yeah, it's again, pretty clear, lots of clear data, lots of reports that have outlined the link. And like I said, we can share a report with folks if they're interested.
Thank you. We have another couple of questions on the chat, but before I go to those, I want to let people know, if you are curious and you're wondering how much of your income you are using to pay your energy bills, we at the Sierra Club have created something that we call the energy calculator, and put in on the chat box, I just put the website that you can go and access, and by putting some information, it will let you know how much of your income you are spending on energy cost. And it also is going to show you a percentage on if you are in the average or you are below or above the average. Will put you also on the margin of energy burden or not. And if you are at the bottom of the page, you will find some resources, in this case for the state of Virginia, but feel free to share this link with all your friends in other states, because as we have, when you put your zip code, it's gonna give you, in this case, information about Virginia, but when you put another zip code from another state, it will give you information from another state. So it's a tool that could be used by anybody that lives here in the United States to get an idea of how much they're paying. So the next question is, how effective have the energy equity provisions on the Virginia Clean Economy Act been in easing the energy burden of lower income families?
That would be a Mary Stewart question. I can try to answer as best I can.
Yeah, and Glenn, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Anne. So I can't speak to the Virginia Clean Economy Act off the cuff, but the major program that comes to mind with that question is the PIP legislation, which is the percentage of income payment program that seeks to target that specifically.
Oh, Mary Stewart's here.
Yeah, but Mary Stewart, here, I'm gonna, not to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna allow you to talk and you can speak if you would like. But you don't have to.
Sorry about that.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So within the Virginia Clean Economy Act, there was language that created a percentage of income payment program, which caps energy burden for folks that qualify. So it is based off of the federal poverty level, and this will cap it at 2 different percentage points. It is, I believe, 8% if you are on electric, and 11 or 12, and I can look these up real quick and put the correct numbers in the chat, but if you are on gas, and this program will actually go online this year. It's being administered by the Virginia Department of Social Services and the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. So for folks who already receive services from the Department of Social Services, DSS, you would be eligible to participate in this through a once-a-year income verification. And again, that would cap your energy bill at a percentage of your annual income. So that is great news. It has been in the process of being developed since that legislation went into effect last July. So this will be a great program to help benefit Virginians that are already overburdened with their energy bill and in other places.
Thank you very much, Mary Stewart, for the explanation. Continuing with the questions, the next one is, what is the eco district in the Hampton Roads mentioned in the second film? What it was being mentioned on the second film is an eco district that is a project. It's called Eco District Hampton Roads Project. Is in Portsmouth, and it's comprised of 7 communities that has been combined to form one of the largest African American communities in the nation. And that's a project in the Portsmouth region. Yeah, and thank you for the information that you put, Mary Stewart, on the chat box also. And so far, those are all the questions. I don't know if anybody has any other question. I just want to remind people that
I saw something in the Q&A. How can we map energy burden in our areas? Sharonda mentioned a mapping tool that was already developed.
Oh.
Can you point us towards that? So Nicole, I'm not sure. Nicole, are you a Sierra Club member? If you are, so like I said, we've developed an internal energy burden mapping tool. We mostly use it to inform the work we do within our chapters and campaigns, but it's a tool that is so much access to it, we're able to work with or share the link with people who do work with Sierra Club. So that's something that if you'd like access to that tool, we could direct you to it. And if you had any questions about how to use it, you could reach out to someone at the chapter. So it's not something that we widely distribute because our analyst team doesn't currently have the structure to be able to field questions if there's like issues with the tool, but something that if we have a staff person that is able to help someone answer any questions, we're happy to share that link with folks. And the nice thing about the tool is it shows not just energy burden, but you can look at energy burden. You can also look at racial demographics, look at rental share, look at formerly redline communities. And so we're not able to overlay that data. That's the one thing that we're not able to do. But if you click on and off, you can see where you're seeing a lot of the same communities are dealing with a lot of intersectional issues.
Hey, Sharonda, thank you. Sorry, I didn't have the capacity to unmute myself at first. Yeah, my personal membership actually just lapsed. I haven't renewed it yet, but I'm a regional planner in Virginia. And so I'd really be interested in incorporating that mapping tool into our regional planning work, if that's something we could work with.
That sounds really cool. Let me talk to our analyst about that. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate the questions from everybody. Feel free to, I don't know if there is any other question. Well, somebody might be typing either on the question part or on the chat box. I wanna let everybody know that, as I said earlier, this is our first webinar, but we're gonna have another one, our second webinar, in roughly a month. It's gonna be on June 15, and we're gonna continue talking about energy. In this case, we're going to talk about housing and equity and how the access to healthy, affordable housing is critical needs for people here in Virginia. We will have Steve Fishback, the litigation director for the Virginia Poverty Law Center, that is going to talk about the issue of public housing and housing issues in Virginia. And also we will have a community member share their experiences. Because we want people to know some of our people that are listening to these webinars to know what it means, what it is living in one of these housings. And when you start having a high utility costs, what you have to do, what you are able to do in order to pay for those bills, or you are not able to afford them, and what are the consequences of those. So this again will be in June 15. If you want to register, we just put the link. Thank you, Anne, for putting the link on the chat box. So please, we're looking forward. And as I said, this is the first one. We're going to have the second one in roughly a month to continue this conversation. And I want to just thank Sharonda one more time for giving us the information related to energy burden and for the time. And I want to also thank all the attendants for participating. And please remember that I share the link for the energy burden calculator so you can see where you are and share it with your friends so they can use it all. And looking forward to see everybody in a month in our second webinar. Thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.